Hey, this is Jamie Stegmeyer with Stonemeyer Games, and today I'm going to talk about one of my favorite mechanisms, favorite components in any game, and that is player mats that have tokens on them that you can remove over the course of the game to upgrade your income, get better abilities, and sometimes get instant benefits as you reveal the token, as you take the token off your mat. So I wanted to talk about this from both a design perspective and highlight a few different games. I'm going to be looking over at my other screen a lot because I'm going to pull up on this other screen examples of player mats from each of the 10 games I'm going to highlight. And Joe, I think, will edit in images so you can see them on the screen as I'm talking about them here. And I'm going to dive as deep as I can remember into each of these mats. I haven't played all these games recently, but I played some of them to show you some of the different things that you can provide to players when you have this mechanism of lifting up tokens off of player mats. Some honorable mentions that I should include are Gaia Project, Crusaders Thy Will Be Done, Eclipse, Maracaibo, Near and Far, and Viscounts of the West Kingdom. I haven't played that last one, so I haven't played Viscounts yet. But these all those games have really great systems of player mats where you're lifting tokens off those mats and upgrading your player mat itself. But not quite my top 10. And for this top 10, I will warn you, there are two games that I have designed that I decided to put on this top 10 list. I will give you full disclosure when I get to those games, but as I was making this list, there aren't a lot of games that have this mechanism or this component, or at least those that I've played, and I really like the way that I did it in my game. So I included on this list. Feel free to completely discount them if you'd like, because I am obviously biased towards games that I've designed. So at number 10, I have Praga, Caput, Regni. I'll pull up my little helpful visual over here. This was one that I almost didn't put on the list because a lot of what you're doing on this mat is you are moving tokens along tracks, which is not a mechanism that I'm highlighting today. I'm specifically highlighting when you're putting tokens on the board and then pulling them off to reveal something new. And in Praga Caput Regni, there are some tokens that do that on your mat. And they do so in what I think is a really clever way, because there are these dials on your mat that count resources. And you can only move those dials a certain amount because there's a token that physically blocks them from moving higher. However, that's relevant because as soon as you would gain resources that would kind of knock your dial into the token for the first time, that allows you to actually gain that token and then move the tile past it, or move the dial past it. So it's kind of a physical reminder that when you get to this certain point on your resource dials, you gain a bonus, and that bonus is twofold. One, it's an instant benefit under the token itself, so you get this instant benefit, and you gain that token, which is helpful for kind of gaining control of some areas on the board and helping you build things on the board itself. So it's a double benefit. I love double benefits in games, and a lot of these games that use these tokens give you that double benefit because you're not just getting the thing that's under the token that you lifted off, but you're also getting the token itself and doing something important with that token. And Praga Caput Regni does the additional thing that I just mentioned of having that reminder of when you actually get that token because you can't physically move the dial past it. So that's number 10, Praga Caput Regni. At number 9, I have Great Western Trail. Now, full disclosure, I have not played Great Western Trail in a while, but I really like what the system, as far as I can recall, that was used on the player mat. So I'm looking at the player mat here on my other screen. A lot of stuff going on here of tokens that you can reveal to upgrade different actions on the mat. You are upgrading, I need to remember, you're upgrading some of the core actions that you're taking that give you additional benefits when you get those core actions. And then there's kind of the tracks. So the people that you gain over the course of the game, the three different types of people you can place on the tracks to upgrade the abilities on those tracks themselves. I probably should have reviewed this specific one before I talked about it because it does have a lot going on the player map that I don't necessarily remember. But a lot of it, again, is taking these tokens off I think, as I recall, you gain these tokens from doing things on the board, and then you're pulling them off your player mat to reveal different bonuses. Maybe check out a video about Great Western Trail to remember more about that and learn more about that. But I do recall it being a really, really nice player mat where you're moving stuff off the player mat itself. So that is number 9, Great Western Trail. Route, I can be a little bit more specific about. I have played Route a little bit more recently. Route has a lot of different player mats that have this ability, where you're pulling stuff off the player mat and exposing different abilities. But I think one of the best examples of this is the Marquis de Cat, the orange faction in Root. And this has some buildings that you have the ability to make and build over the course of the game. And as you do so, you're getting better benefits for doing so. So there's one type of building that gives you more victory points. There's another building, I'm not seeing it on the example here, but I believe it gives you more resources, maybe more cards to draw as you pull off those buildings. And there's another one that's kind of a combination between the two. But I love the idea that you're pulling off these tokens and putting them on the board. They have a meaning on the board itself, but you're also gaining incremental benefits as you do so. You're improving your benefits when you're actually making buildings over the course of the game. I actually might be misstating that too. If someone's played the Marquis de Cat faction more recently, feel free to clarify in the comments below. Number 7 is Spirit Island. So the example I pulled up for Spirit Island is the spirit called River Surges in Sunlight. And so in Spirit Island, you have tokens that are on in your presence section of the mat. And one of them is related to energy. So the amount of energy you have on any given turn, that's one of the tokens. And the other is the number of cards that you can play on a turn. And so this is just a great upgrade system here. As you remove these tokens, you are improving your ability to play better cards or play more cards. I love that decision point. Am I going to play better cards or more cards on your turn? That is a really, really cool decision point. And one of the nice things in Spirit Island is that the gaining of these tokens is part of what you're doing every round in the growth phase. You're choosing which token to move off there, and you're also there are cards that you can play to get these tokens as well. So I really like how that system in Spirit Island, and it's kind of a universal system. I think each spirit has different ways that you get those tokens off the tracks, but the tracks themselves are very similar from one spirit to the next. There are some that are very different too, but you always, for most spirits, you do have this system of energy and number of cards that you can actually play. So yeah, that is Spirit Island, my number 7 favorite game that uses this mechanism. Next up is Paladins of the West Kingdom. So a big part of this game is the player mat. It's a pretty long, extended player mat, and it's also a worker placement system. So you're actually placing workers on this mat and often pulling them off to reveal different spaces and kind of. It's actually almost the opposite of this system. I probably should have led with that, thought about that before I put this on the list. But in many ways, you are blocking spaces on your mat so that you can place fewer workers on them, so they don't require as many workers for you to place on those spaces to gain the corresponding benefits. So it is a little bit of the opposite of pulling tokens off, but this system makes it a little bit easier to set up the game because you're not placing all these tokens on the mat at the beginning of the game, rather you're placing them over the course of the game and improving your actions, which is one of the things I wanted to mention because there are some downsides to this player mat system, which is the initial setup at the beginning of the game. You have to put all these tokens out on your mat. The increase in cost, because you have a bunch of tokens that you're putting on the mat. Those tokens cost money that increases the price of the game. And also the risk of having those tokens slide around over the course of the game. Some of these mats have dual layered systems like in Scythe, but some of them don't. And so tokens can slide around a little bit. I've generally found that that's more of a perception than something that actually happens. I think it's pretty rare that you're actually like banging the table to the point that all of your tokens scatter everywhere. And if that is happening, if you are banging the table that much, then any game is going to be an issue for you. You are going to be knocking tokens everywhere. However, dual layered player mats do help a little bit with that if you're able to afford to put a dual layered player mat in the game and still offer a reasonable price. Number 5 is Hansa Teutonica. This is kind of one of the originators of this system. I think this actually came even before the game that's best known for it. In Hansa Teutonica, you start out with this player mat that has a bunch of different tokens on it. What you're seeing here probably is a mat with no tokens on it, so all the tokens have been revealed. But these contribute to things like how much money you're gaining each round, the different colors you have access to. I should have refreshed myself on this one too. Oh man, what is this top track? I think it's the number of points that you gain, but this top track I believe also offers you a limitation. And there's different coin values on each of these. You can see the coin value on the far right. So this tells you the cost of how much it would cost to remove one of these tokens. So it's kind of a built-in action of How much do you want to pay to just remove one of these tokens and improve your abilities, improve your income over the course of the game? I am not, this video is not going well because I'm realizing that I'm not remembering a lot of these exact systems in the games. But hopefully, if any of these tracks, any of these player mats interest you, you can research them a little bit more and learn more about them. However, we're getting to a few games that I know because I designed them. Number 4 is Tapestry. In Tapestry, you have an income mat where you start the game with, I'm going to focus on the top part of this map, this mat, where you start the game with 5 buildings on each of the tracks, and they cover up a bunch of different stuff on those tracks. And whenever you gain income, whenever you take an income turn, you gain all exposed benefits, so all benefits that you can actually see on the map. Over the course of the game, you're gaining these buildings, and when you gain a building, you're pulling it off your player mat and you're putting it in your capital city, potentially giving you multiple benefits. So this is one thing I think that is important to keep in mind when you have a game like this, that if it's improving income, it's also nice to give players an instant benefit. So in Tapestry, you are removing a token, a building from your player mat, from your income mat, and not getting an immediate bonus because you're only getting that when you actually take an income turn. But you're putting the building in your capital city. And in your capital city, if you complete a district, you instantly gain a resource of your choice. And so those buildings are moving you closer towards getting an extra resource that you can spend right away. But the different types of income, the income are related to the 4 different resources in the game. So each of the income tracks helps you get more income. But also each of the tracks has its own little flavor. So there's one track that gives you territory tiles and gives you points. There's one track that just straight up points. There's another track that gives you points for every tech card that you have. There's a track that gives you points for completed rows and columns in your capital city. And then the military track gives you points for each territory you control. So in that way, you're able to get a little bit of different flavor from each of these different tracks. And yeah, I just think it's a pretty simple, streamlined system, but it really gives you that sense of progression over the course of the game, because your income very early in the game is very low, but later in the game you can be getting a ton of income and have a really big turn that follows, or really big series of advancement turns that follow after that. So that is Tapestry, my number 4. Again, Tapestry is a game that I designed, but I wanted to put it on this list because I think it belongs on this list of games that have fun things that happen when you pull tokens off your player mat. Next up is another one of my games, the other one, Scythe. Scythe, here, I'll pull up my little visual here. A lot of what you're doing in Scythe goes into this player mat. In fact, the entire action selection system, all the actions that you can do in the game are built into the player mat itself. On your turn in Scythe, you're choosing one of these 4 sections, and you're taking either the top or the bottom row action, or neither, or ideally both. You're taking the top row action and then the bottom row action. And you can see a lot of symbols on this map, and there are a lot of different things that are covered up on the mat at the beginning of the game. So you're covering up a lot of things with cubes, the upgrade tokens. So you're covering them up, and whenever you take an upgrade action, you're moving a cube from the top row to the bottom row. And in doing that, you are making a top row benefit better, and you're making a bottom row cost lower. So you're getting a double benefit there by upgrading. There are also buildings that start out on your player mat. They're not built yet; they're just on your player mat. And when you build them, they give you control of the territory where you place them, unless there are other enemy units there later in the game. But you're also getting an additional benefit during the game on your player mat based on where you removed that token from. And then there are also recruit tokens. I won't go into the whole recruit system, but it's these recruit tokens that you take off your mat, you place them on your faction mat for a one-time benefit, and then from then on, whenever you or either of your neighbors, the players next to you, take that specific bottom row action, you gain a benefit. So there's a little bit of player interaction there, reasons to pay attention to other players in that recruit system. So many different types of tokens built into this player mat itself, and all your actions in the game are contained in the player mat. And I love how it worked out. This was directly inspired by a game that will be higher up on this list in a second, but I love all the different types of tokens on the player mat and Scythe and how they contribute to a feeling of progression over the course of the game. So that is Scythe, my number 3 favorite game that uses this system. Number 2 is Clans of Caledonia. This again is another game that was inspired by the number 1 game on this list, which I'm building up to. But in Clans of Caledonia, similar to Scythe, pretty much, I think it might be all of your actions are built into the map, because the main thing you're doing in Clans of Caledonia is spending money to take one of these buildings that are on your map and placing them on the map itself. So you're just spending money to move a building off. So you get the benefit of controlling a territory, or having a territory using that building token. But you're also revealing income benefits. And there are a lot of interesting income benefits on here. There are different resources that you're gaining. There's income that you're gaining, like actual money that you're gaining, and there's certain buildings that relate to each other, where you need to both get wheat buildings, and then you need to be able to have buildings that turn that wheat into either bread or whiskey. So they kind of have these buildings that are tied together to one another on the player mats themselves. But again, I like that everything you're doing in the game is built into this map. Like on your turn, you were just spending money on one of these buildings. And there's also some actions at the bottom. There's some ways that you can upgrade actions. There is the river track that you can advance on, and there are tokens that you can get for trading purposes. So you kind of have these merchant tokens that you can pay for, that you can gain these merchant tokens, and they lead to the one other action that you can take in the game. Or there's two other actions. One is to gain goals. The other is to use a merchant token to go trade, to go buy or sell something at the market. Really, really great system here of starting out with a mat full of different things and pulling them off your mat during the game and putting them on the main board. In Clans of Caledonia, that's my number 2. Now, both Scythe and Clans of Caledonia were inspired by this number 1 game that I mentioned in many videos, but it is the kind of the, I don't want to say grandfather of these games, because Hansa Teutonica came first, but Terra Mystica, I think, really brought this system of a mat full of tokens that you pull off and do different things with and gain different income. I think it really brought that to life and brought it to a ton of different gamers. So in Terra Mystica, you start out with an asymmetric player mat that's filled with these different tokens, these building tokens. And over the course of the game, you are acquiring these buildings or even leveling up buildings and placing them on the map. So you're either taking a building and leveling up, or you're taking a settlement from your player mat and placing it on a territory where you don't have anything yet, and no other player has anything on that territory. But there's so many different tokens on this mat that lead to different types of income. So there's income. There's I think there's priest income that you can gain. There's a one-time benefit whenever you gain a priest, where you gain either one, or in this case, I think we're showing the Chaos Magicians here. The Chaos Magicians gain these special oval tokens. They gain 2 of them. Normally, a player would just gain 1 of these oval tokens. So that's the asymmetry coming into play here. You're gaining more magic. You can gain money. You can gain more workers. And you can also unlock, if you get to the highest level buildings, you can unlock special abilities with those high level buildings, which I love that as well. And these mats all have different costs on them. So there are different costs to upgrade to these buildings. And I love the upgrade system. I really love how you're kind of deciding, what do I need next round? Do I need a lot of workers next round? If so, I'm just going to make a bunch of settlements and spread out and get a bunch of workers. Or next round, do I really need money? Do I need a balance of workers and money? And then you're deciding, okay, because whenever you upgrade a settlement to a trading house, I believe that's what they're called, you are replacing the settlement, and the settlement comes back to your mat. So it's this constant, you're kind of moving forward a few steps, but also moving back 1 step, and you're getting different income as a result of which building you've decided to or not to upgrade. And all the while, you're kind of pushing towards certain buildings, thanks to go, like round-based goals in the game that say like, this round, for every trading house you build, you get 3 extra points. And so that might incentivize you to have a trading house heavy round instead of other buildings. And you have the asymmetric abilities that you're moving towards. If you get certain buildings, you're moving towards unlocking those asymmetric abilities, which are sometimes one-time abilities, sometimes they're ongoing actions that you have. Just a wonderful system in Terra Mystica. I'm so grateful for Terra Mystica for creating this system and inspiring Scythe and Tapestry and Clans of Caledonia, games like that. So that's definitely my number 1, Terra Mystica. My number 1 favorite game that uses a player mat system where you're removing tokens from the player mat and improving your income or getting instant benefits, or a mix of the 2. I'd love to hear. I'm sure I've left off some games here. Or you might have some favorites among the honorable mentions that I mentioned. So feel free to talk about that in the comments below. I'd love to hear some of your favorite games that use this action. And if you've heard a succinct term for it, I'd love to hear about that in the comments below, because I don't really have a succinct term to explain this action mechanism. As far as I know, it isn't a mechanism listed on Board Game Geek, but I hope we can think of a term and maybe put that on Board Game Geek to find more games that use this system. All right, that's it. Thanks. I look forward to discussing this with you in the comments below. Thanks.